Hello, welcome to another podcast episode. What's the weather doing? Where are we? 7:20 in the morning, 14 centigrade, 57 Fahrenheit, 94% humidity. It's been raining all night, which is rather good for the garden, and now it's sunny. 10-15 millibars on the barometer, and the flag, well, it's sort of twisting itself round the pole. A slight breeze, I think, from whatever direction. I can't really see. How are you? Hope you're keeping well. What have you been up to? Let me know. Rants@protonmail.com. Have a look on the website, rants.info. What have I added there? I put some pictures there. I think there was a picture of me. Oh, that's right. Me in my teens, in my shed running a pirate radio station. Now, this episode is, well, not all about, it's about all sorts of things, but some of it is about the way things are built these days, such as furniture, and the way furniture was built back in the good old days when I was a boy. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy the episode. We've just had our kitchen retiled, which is nice. The old tiles, they'd been there for years. I put the tiles up originally, decades ago. So we've just had it all retiled. I've decorated, painted the ceiling and bits and pieces. It's all lovely. We didn't want new units because they cost a fortune. But the cupboard door under the sink, the hinges have ripped out of the chipboard. Absolute rubbish, as I keep saying. I keep using that word rubbish. I suppose it's okay. In this day and age, a fitted kitchen, that white sort of plastic they cover the woodwork with, melamine, isn't it, or something. It's okay, I suppose. It's a cheap kitchen. Well, I say cheap. It cost thousands when I put the units in. In fact, I fitted the whole kitchen. It cost a few £1,000s. A lot of money, just for some old chipboard cabinets and bits of worktop and stuff and the sink. But there we are. It's all ripped out now. What I've got to do is try to somehow repair the chipboard, fit hinges. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. I do have a plan, but I won't bore you with that. Of course, you can buy expensive kitchens these days. You know, if you want to spend 20 or 30,000 or more. What am I saying? Yes, or more, definitely. You could probably buy a kitchen made out of oak. No, it'd be more than that, wouldn't it? It would cost a fortune. Depends on the size. So presumably that would be quite nice, quite well built. I wonder whether they use dovetail joints these days in the drawers. I remember at school we had woodwork and the chap was showing us how to make dovetail joints. It took me hours to do it. I remember every lesson we had to go back to this dovetail jointing and little chiselling and stuff. Mine never did fit together, not properly anyway. It sort of fitted in the end, but it was loose. Of course, these days machines do it, don't they? But of course you can't do that on chipboard. So anyway, there we are. I've got to sort out the door under the sink. I've still got this rough voice. I don't know what it is. I sound awful. Apologies for that. I don't know what it is. It's all gone kind of rough and bassy. The drawers we've got in the bedroom, the wardrobe, there's drawers at the bottom, and it's a sheet. At the bottom of the drawer, you pull the drawer out, the bottom of the drawer is a sheet of very thin hardboard, very thin hardboard. It's painted white or sprayed white or whatever they do. But of course, after a while, with the weight of whatever's in there, some clothes, it sinks. So then you can't open the drawer because the bottom of it is catching. Oh, it's just rubbish. I must stop using that word. I wouldn't make a very good salesman, would I, in a furniture store? There we are, madam. This is our range of beautiful bedroom furniture. There's a lovely chest of drawers there for you. Look at that. Look how that drawer just slides. Hang on. Just slides out. Oh, with ease. There we are. Oh, hang on, the bottom's hanging out. That's all right. When you get it home, just put a little bit of wood glue around there to keep the bottom in. Might be an idea to add a couple of wooden struts under there to... On second thoughts, that'll be okay. Just don't put anything too heavy in there. Just some light headscarves or something. Perhaps a blouse or two, a light shirt, but nothing more than that. I don't think I'd last 5 minutes as a salesman. I'd hate it. I really would hate it. Anyway, let's move on. I've got something else that might bore you now. Listen to this. I popped out for a quick walk earlier. Rather a nice morning. And the sun was out. I thought I'd just have a quick walk. Trisha's in her gym on a treadmill, so I thought I'd better do some kind of exercise. And I was looking at people's gardens. I took my little recorder with me, and this is what happened. I'm just out for a little walk around the streets. It's rather nice. It's early morning, 7:30, and there's already some workmen doing something. I'm just looking at people's gardens. Oh, he seems to have stopped now. Oh, here he goes again. I'll move on away from him in a minute. I'm just looking at this garden here. It's absolutely beautiful. The lawn is like a bowling green. The edges are perfectly square except for one edge, which is wavy. The plants, there's a bit of traffic around, are the bedding plants. They're perfectly spaced, equidistant. The trouble is, it's too good. It's too symmetrical. It's too perfect. It looks, I don't know, it looks plastic. Is that the right word? I do like a garden that's a little bit more, perhaps colourful, with the flowers, perhaps a few weeds here and there. I know you might be thinking, well, you don't want weeds in your garden. Weeds are only called weeds if they're plants that you don't want. I suppose you couldn't call a rose bush a weed just because you don't want the rose bush or you don't like it. But this garden is too, there's some people over there now having a chat. It's too nice, it's too perfect in every respect. I'm just moving on now to next door. I don't think the people are looking out of the window. The window's open. I don't want them to see me. Now this one is the total opposite. To be honest, it's an absolute mess. The grass must be a foot long. Having said that, there are weeds, wildflowers. It's not been touched, obviously. Another car. For a long time. But the wildflowers are lovely. There are bees on the flowers. It really is nice. Also, it's total opposite, perhaps too far the other way, but in one respect, it's lovely because it's just been left. It's natural, it's wild. Just go on a bit further. Hang on, let's go on a bit further. Now this one, well, they've got a pile of rubbish there to be collected by the look of it. But this one's got some nice plants. It's not perfect. I'd say this one's about right. There's some people over there. They're looking at me now, talking into the furry microphone. They're probably thinking, what's he doing? Morning. Oh dear. That's right, they sort of waved, and I'm just going to move on in a minute. In fact, I'll move on now, I think. Talking of outside broadcasts, as I call them, Derek. Hello, Derek. Nice to hear from you. He said, can you not pretend to be outside by bringing in background noises? I can, Derek. In fact, I can do that now. There we are, it's raining. It's just started raining here in my high-tech studio. There's not a great deal of point in doing that because, well, I suppose I could say, oh, I'm now standing in the middle of the field and it's pouring with rain. I'm getting wet. I can see a farmer over there on his tractor. He was hoping to plough the field, but I think what with this storm that seems to be coming in, he's not going to have much luck. I'm back in the studio now. You probably heard the thunder. The lightning was getting a bit close. It's all fiction, Derek. It's all fiction, isn't it? It's all done with smoke and mirrors. But there we are. Yes, it's a good point, actually. I wonder how many of the people I could fool. Of course, if you can hear I don't know whether you can hear the clock now in the hall. Oh, it stopped. You can imagine that in the background coming in, then people thinking, hang on, how come he's got a chiming clock in the middle of a field when it's pouring with rain and there's a storm brewing? I'm walking through a large, empty, old warehouse. I thought there might be something of interest in here, but seemingly not. It's just derelict and, well, nothing to see at all, really. Right, that's enough of that. There you are, Derek. I was in an old warehouse then, after I'd been in the field getting wet, with the thunder rolling and the rain coming down. Okay, let's get back to something sensible, shall we? I must say, what I used to like about the old BBC radio plays back in the 50s, the 60s, when I was a child, I had a radio by my bed and I'd listen to the radio plays rather than going to sleep. And the sound effects were terrific. You'd have someone walking up a gravel drive and you could hear the crunching of their shoes on the gravel as they approached the front door of the house. Then you hear the door, the lock opening, then the door, the hinges creaking as the door opens. It was terrific for my imagination. I pictured it, pictured the whole scene. And all it was someone in the BBC sound effects place crunching things on gravel and opening a small door with rusty hinges. I saw a documentary about it, and they had a door frame on a piece of wood, only about a foot high, with a door, an actual little door in it, with rusty hinges. So you open the door, it was a genuine sound effect. It wasn't an effect, it was genuine, but the door was only about a foot high by kind of 7 inches wide or 6 inches wide. But it was fantastic listening to those plays and the sound effects. It just, I don't know, in my imagination, it took me into the scene. I really liked it. I enjoyed all that. It's a shame they don't do all these plays anymore. Hello to Bob over there in California. Nice to hear from you, Bob. You mentioned I talk about taking something to bits. Now that was interesting because you said over there you've never heard of that. You don't take something to bits. Where does that come from? That's interesting. I've never thought about it. I'll take a radio to bits, or you take an engine to bits. I think where that's come from is you might have a radio on the bench. You've taken the valves or the tubes out and a transformer, and you've taken the knobs off, and all those parts, they are bits of the radio. They're bits, aren't they? You might take an engine apart. You take the spark plugs out. You take this out, the oil filter, you take that out, you take everything out, and they are all the parts or the bits of the engine. So you take it to bits. That's interesting, that. I'd never thought about it. It's funny, isn't it, the differences between, although we all speak English, the difference between a lot of English and American sort of terminology and the way words are pronounced and things. That's interesting. You'll say debris and we say debris. Apart from pronunciation, there are completely different words. We put the rubbish out, you put the trash out. We walk along the pavement, along the street. You walk along the sidewalk. Actually, sidewalk is quite a good term, isn't it? It's on the side and it's where you walk. Yeah, I rather like that, like the boardwalk. That's good. Our pavement, I suppose pave comes from paved area. I don't know. Anyway, enough of words. We're not here to be talking about words. I do like etymology, though. I've always liked looking into the origin of word. I'm going off again on words. Let's move on from words. Let's move away from that. Email from Lynn in Scotland. Hello, Lynn. She says, do you remember the old pine tables that they used to scrub? I don't know. How old are you, Lynn? I know what you mean. How old am I? I don't think we had, in my childhood, a pine table where you scrub the top. I think that's going back to the kind of 30s and 20s, back to the 1800s even. But I do know what you mean. And Lynn's point is the table didn't rock. You could lean on it and it was solid. It was built solidly. I do remember those. And they had a drawer, didn't they, Lynn, for the knives and forks or whatever, a drawer in the table itself. They were good. Lynn's just bought a new table. She says it wasn't cheap, but it does rock. It's not a heavy dining room table, it's a kitchen table. She says when we sit down to have breakfast, if someone accidentally kicks one of the legs, the drinks on the table all slop around. So she's looking out for one of the original old pine tables. They were good. We had one in my childhood, a table, kitchen table. It was Formica, the top. So it wasn't as old as that sort of thing, Lynn, but it was solid. Easy to clean, of course, Formica. But yeah, the modern stuff. Now, what we do, we try to buy as much second-hand furniture as possible. In fact, we just bought it's not a three-piece suite, it's a two-seater sofa, a single armchair, and what do you call it? A puffet. A puff. You know what I mean? A puffet. Puffet? I don't know what it is. It's a thing that you can sit on or put your feet on. And it is really good. I don't know how old it is, but it is solidly built. Beautiful piece of furniture, or 3 pieces of furniture. Really nice. 200 quid. Well, with delivery, 225. And that will last us forever. I believe it was the advent of chipboard that was the beginning of the downfall in quality and build, as they call it these days. What do you call chipboard in other countries, America, Australia? What do you call chipboard? Do you know what I mean? Basically, it's a load of chips of wood all glued together and sort of squashed into a flat piece of wood. And the coating on it, I think they call it melamine, some sort of plastic coating. And now, of course, we have MDF, don't we? I forget what that stands for. MDF is better than chipboard. It's very heavy. So is chipboard. That's the trouble. That's why our kitchen cupboard door under the sink, That's why it's ripped off the hinges. That's a rather large door, and the weight of it has just pulled the screws out of the chipboard. We bought a table for the dining room from someone locally. Apparently it was in a pub, and there's a cigarette burn on the top of it. It's been varnished over that, but there's a cigarette burn there, which is great. That was in a pub, and apparently the pub closed down. The person we bought it from, I think it was their pub, they said that that was a table where these two old boys used to sit and have their beer and put the world to rights and have their cigarettes. So rather good, £20. And the top of it is one piece of wood, and the one edge, well, both edges of it is shaped. You know, it's like a rough bit of a tree edge. It hasn't got the bark on it. Now, my son in North Carolina, he's just built something in the kitchen area with bark, isn't it, on the edge. The bark is still on the wood, and that looks fantastic. But this is curved where the tree would have been shaped, and it's one piece of wood. We did have a pine table where the top, you could see, it was strips of pine. It was like planks of wood, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches, 4 inches wide, all squashed together to make one top. And of course the grain didn't match, it all looked odd. Again, it's cheap, isn't it? It's using up old bits of wood. I suppose you could say, well, why not use up old bits of wood rather than just burn them? That's a waste. I don't know. But I do like this 20 quid table with its pub history and its cigarette burn in the top. I like that. The stair carpet here in our house was put down in 1962. This was Trisha's grandmother's house, so it's been in the family since 1920 something. And this stair carpet, put down in 62, it was only, 10 years, no, not even 10 years ago, we changed it. It was beginning to wear after, what's that? How many years ago is that? 60, is it? 60 years, something like that. Incredible. We bought a new lounge carpet about 5 years ago. It's faded, it's gone horrible. It's just not nice at all. And it wasn't particularly cheap. So again, the quality of stuff, I suppose you can buy Axminster, or is it something, Axminster carpets. I suppose if you want to spend a lot of money, then you will get a decent carpet. But this one's faded and there's no sunlight in it anyway. It's just one of those things, isn't it? What do you do? Can't really buy a second-hand carpet. I suppose you could do, actually. The garden fence when we moved here, that was the original fence from when the house was built in the back garden. It was oak posts, all done properly, oak panels or whatever they were, you know, the strut bits. And yes, it was falling to bits and it was rotten in a few places, but it was approaching 100 years old. You put up fence panels these days, you're lucky if they last 5 years. I remember taking the old fence down and the oak wood, I didn't want to throw it away. It was well weathered. You couldn't really have done much with it, but I didn't really want to throw it away. So what we did, we used it as firewood. And that was lovely on the open fire in the winter. Lumps of oak burning, it was really nice. We were going to have when we had all the double glazing done, we were going to have a new front door. And our niece, she said, I'll have the old front door for our house if you don't want it. And that got us thinking, hang on a minute, that's over 100 years old, there's nothing wrong with it. Why are we changing it for plastic? So we didn't. We said, sorry, you can't have that, we're keeping it. Most people in the street have replaced their front doors with the double glazed units, you know, and they look all right, but ours is original. I do like original. I don't know what it's made from. It's hard wood. It's probably oak. It's very heavy, I know that. And it's got a glass panel in it, a sort of frosted glass. That is original as well. You can see it's never been replaced. And that front door, that'll still be here in 100 years. In fact, the house probably be here in 100 years. Well, I don't know. The way everything's going, they're pulling everything down, aren't they? They pull down decent buildings, these decent old houses, and they put up rubbishy stuff. I suppose back in the old days, things were built to last. Look at antiques. Something that was, I don't know, a cupboard or a cabinet that was built in 1600 or 1700 and something. Lovely antiques, worth a fortune now, but they're still going. Hundreds of years later, they were built to last. And they do all the inlay, wouldn't they? The veneer inlay and stuff like that. All sorts of, was it ivory inlay? Can't use ivory now, of course, which is a good thing. But they're still going hundreds of years later. You go and buy some cabinet or something these days from your local store, and you're lucky if it lasts, well, I don't know, if you look after it, 10 years perhaps. The double glazed window units, after about 15, 20 years, people are having them replaced. We had the original windows replaced here because they were the original wood windows and the wood was beginning to rot and they were drafty and it wasn't good. You could see that the glass was original because it had flaws in it. Do you know what I mean? Not air bubbles as such, but flaws. Yeah, you look through it and some of it was almost magnifying the view over the road sort of thing. So that was the original glass and the original window frames. We had to have the double glazing put in because they were pretty rough, the old units, the old frames, and they were drafty and they rattled and things. Many decades ago we had a newish house. It was only 10 years old, something like that. And the floor upstairs was chipboard. Not square bits of chipboard, but offcuts of chipboard fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle. There were triangular bits and oblong bits, square bits, all fitted together to make the flooring upstairs. The reason I wanted to lift the board, I thought they were boards, I wanted to do some wiring, put in some extra power points. But it's this chipboard stuff, I can't take that up. Again, absolute rubbish. I was amazed. Whereas here we have decent 100-year-old floorboards and they are really good. Obviously it's all down to money. I don't know whether there are any craftsmen around still. Perhaps if you wanted a kitchen made properly out of decent wood, you could probably go to a craftsman somewhere. It would cost you a lot of money, but of course it would last forever. Have the craftsmen all gone? We don't have blacksmiths anymore. Every village had a blacksmith and a farrier for looking after horses' hooves. I was going to say feet, they're hooves, aren't they? I know we don't have horses around anymore, so a farrier in every town or village will be sitting there twiddling his thumbs, wondering what to do. Same with a blacksmith. We used to have a blacksmith. It was a scrap metal man down the high street, Little High Street it was, and he had all the blacksmith's gear, you know, the huge anvil and all the coals that were glowing red there. And that was in my teens, so that was the 60s. I suppose there's no need for it anymore. I remember years ago a neighbour of ours, he bought a little garden fork, a hand fork. He started using it and the handle just bent. He was digging up this little plant. I was there talking to him when it happened. He was just digging up this little plant. I think it was a primrose. And as he moved the fork down to lift the roots out, only shallow roots, the handle bent. I said to him, you have to take that back. And he said, I'm not bothered. He threw it in the dustbin. He said, I can't be bothered to take it back. I'll go and find a decent second-hand one somewhere. Just thinking about, we were chatting, was it recently, what is there that's better today than it was back in the day, back in the 50s, 60s? Plastic, I suppose double glazed window units in, what are they, PVC or something. I suppose they're good, they don't need painting, but how long do they last? This is the trouble. The rubber seals go, don't they? They give our back door, hopeless, absolutely hopeless. I got onto a double glazing firm and I said, how much to replace the rubber seal? Because I couldn't get hold of any. 96 quid, he said. What? 96 quid for a strip of rubber around the door? No. So I found some on eBay. I think I paid 20-something pounds for miles of this stuff. So I did it myself. But I've noticed on some of the windows, the rubber sealing, it's gone hard over the years. So I don't know. And as I said, people do have to have the units replaced every 15 years or so. Change of subject completely. Do you remember I said, was it last Sunday or the one before, about 1960s girls? I said, I'm not going to talk about that because that's not what we're on about in this particular podcast episode. And I said, if I get enough emails wanting to hear more about 1960s girls, then I might do something. I've had a load of emails. Struth, Stone the Crows. Everyone wants to hear about 1960s girls. I think I've said it all before, actually. I've talked about the girls back then many times over all the episodes, over 5 years now of weekly Sunday episodes and, of course, the midweek messages. No, I didn't start the midweek messages till a bit later, did I? After I'd done a year or two of the ordinary ones. Anyway, girls, well, they wore short skirts. They looked very feminine. You know all this anyway. You've seen it on the telly. You've seen photos. I think that's what I liked. They were very feminine. Mind you, so were the boys. I had long hair, and I remember, I remember my mum saying, "Why don't you get your hair cut? You look like a girl." I didn't look like a girl, did I? Or perhaps I did, I don't know. The girls did look like girls. Apart from the hippie girls, they looked like old grandmas, old grannies, in shawls and their long straggly hair and flowers in their hair. Granny type. Well, not grannies, yes, old, very old granny, with shawls and things. They looked like that. Not all of them. Some hippie girls wore flared jeans, hipster type flared jeans, colourful bead type necklaces and bracelets. They look good. I did like that. They look good. But the ordinary girls that weren't hippies, I don't know what they were, just 1960s girls. White PVC boots. That was iconic back then, wasn't it? The white PVC boots with heels that went up to the knee, I think, just about. And then the skirts miles above the knee. I think the younger girls had very long hair, and the older girls or young women, they had sort of, what was it, all pushed up hair, back combed, and not big hair as such, but not far off big hair. But they were lovely. The girls back in the 60s were lovely. I loved them all. I really did love them all. I used to love going to the pub. Here we are, we're back on pubs again. Stand at the bar in the pub, looking at all the 60s girls. Fantastic. I don't know, what do girls look like these days? I've no idea, because I don't go out much. I'm a recluse. We went out for a meal the other day to a nice pub. That was quite nice. And there were some girls in there. They looked all right. They looked presentable. Teenage girls. They all have their stomachs hanging out. Well, not hanging out. Mine hangs out. Theirs doesn't. They've got flat stomachs, haven't they? They all like showing their navels for some reason. And very often they've got a stud or something in there. I don't like piercings. I'm not very good at piercings. It just makes me cringe, just the thought of it. Something through your eyebrow or your tongue or something like that. I don't like that at all. A lot of them these days, of course, have tattoos, whereas back then, I don't think I knew of any girl that had a tattoo. It just wasn't done back then. Some of the young lads did. Not me, it wasn't my thing, but a friend of mine, he had a tattoo up his arm. I forget what it was. A snake round a dagger or something? I don't know. Not my thing at all, tattoos. So the girls look like girls and the boys look like girls. Look at some of the bands, the groups as we called them back then. Herman's Hermits, the Pretty Things. I think I mentioned that recently. Some of the band members kind of looked like girls. I don't think they identified as girls as some people do today, but they just looked like girls. Talking of pubs, this meal we went out for the other day, lovely place. They used to do a lovely veggie burger, and I'd have veggie burger and chips. Really, really nice. Well, since they've done the pub up, it's all been redecorated and new seating and everything. Looks lovely. They no longer do the veggie burger. They don't do veggie sausages. They do vegan stuff. Now, I've no complaints about vegan. If that's your thing, that's fine. If you want vegan food, that's lovely. But what about me? I don't want vegan cheese. And I don't want vegan, what do they call them? Plant burgers or something. The veggie burger I'm used to, the old-fashioned veggie burgers, were really nice. They looked like a real burger, but it didn't taste like a real burger. And no one does them anymore. Was it Moving Mountains burgers or something? None of the pubs or restaurants do them anymore. Everything now is vegan. Now, some of that's all right. I have tried a vegan pizza. The cheese on top was pretend cheese. I don't know what it's made of. It was edible, but no, for me, give me the real thing. I do like real cheese. My favourite for lunch is cheese and pickle sandwiches with brown bread. Lovely. I'm getting hungry now. So I had to have, what was the choice? He said, was it halloumi or something? I don't know what that is. Trish said it's some cheese thing. I don't want that. And there was some other vegan burger. It was okay, but it's not a proper veggie burger. Why am I going on about burgers? I expect you're all saying, oh, I like a proper beef burger. I just don't like the taste of meat. I never have. In fact, some of the vegetarian stuff, some of the sausages and burgers, they taste of meat. And I don't like the taste of meat. I know it's odd. I know you think I'm mad. Well, you're right there. I've always been mad. It's like the Linda McCartney chicken Kiev veggie thing. Veggie chicken Kiev. It tastes of chicken. And I don't like the taste of chicken. So I can't eat it. You do think I'm mad now, don't you? Don't like the taste of chicken? Stone the crows, stone the hens. Having said all that about the burgers, the chips were very good. I did sort of eat this burger, or most of it anyway, but the chips were very good. I do like decent chips. Going back to 60s girls, they were great to dance. Well, dance, I can't dance, I never could, but, on the dance floor, I'd go out there and have a go, dance with the girls. Very often they'd all put their handbags on the floor and then dance in a circle around their handbags. So their handbags were safe, and people like me couldn't join in. But if I saw a couple of girls dancing, I'd go over and join in with them, dance with them. Very often they'd turn their back on me and carry on dancing together. I think that was some sort of body language that meant, clear off, we don't want you here. Oh, okay, thanks very much. But sometimes a girl, if I was dancing on my own, a girl would come and join me. Well, I was extremely good looking. I was a fantastic dancer. What a mover. You should have seen me throwing shapes on the dance floor. Right, that's another dream I've just woken up from. No, it was all right. No one could dance back then. Very few people could dance. We used to just go out on the dance floor and throw our arms around and do whatever. And it was good fun. Dancing wasn't about dancing and how good and clever you were. It was having good fun. It was just a bit of fun, wasn't it? Are we allowed to dance these days? Are girls allowed to dance, or would that cause offence to someone? I don't know. Probably get arrested. What I did like about the nightclubs back then, people made an effort with their clothes and their hair. People went out dressed nicely. The girls looked nice, the lads looked nice, depending where we were going, which nightclub it was. Sometimes we'd wear a shirt and tie and a jacket, nice pair of trousers. Other places perhaps just jeans and an open neck shirt. Depends where you were going. But the girls looked good. They put on their nice clothes. They go shopping Saturday downtown to the boutiques and things like that. They buy their new clothes, their new miniskirts and whatever. Then Saturday evening they're down the nightclub in their new gear. It was great. People looked nice back then. They dressed nicely. Even the hippies looked good. I was a hippie. Update on the bed. Do you remember I told you we bought a bed and the 2 drawers that go underneath the bed were smashed up? So we got on to the company and they said, no trouble, we'll send out a couple of drawers. A lorry turned up yesterday. Hello, mate, got a parcel for you. And he gave me this box, which is 1 drawer. Says on it, 1 drawer. And I said, well, where's the other one? There's meant to be 2. Don't know, mate, don't even know what's in it. That's it. Off he went. So we had to get on to them again. Thank you for the drawer. Oh, that's no problem at all. Where's the other one? Ah, yes, looking on the screen, there were meant to be 2, weren't there? Sorry, I'll get that sent out to you. Stone the crows, I don't know. So we're halfway there on the drawer front that fell off, sorry. When I was out on my walk the other day, something else I saw. There was this house that I walked past, exactly the same as our house. There are quite a few in this area that are the same. Bay window upstairs, bay window downstairs, and between the 2 is a kind of bay-shaped pebble dash bit. Now this chap was knocking off all the old pebble dash, exposing the wood inside. Now there were these massive joists, or whatever, they are joists, aren't they? The rafters are in the loft, the ones that hold up the floorboards. They're 6 by 2 inches, that is, 6 by 2. Now I've often wondered in our house, what is in that bay bit between the upstairs and the downstairs window? There's no insulation in there at all, just this kind of concrete pebble dash bit outside, and inside lath and plaster, so no insulation whatsoever. But the point is, I was having a look. He went off to do something and I stood outside and had a good look, and the wood in there, huge pieces of wood, so well built. And it reminded me of in our first house in the loft. When I went up there, we moved in, I went up into the loft, the beams, the rafters, they're tiny bits of wood, and they were held together with metal plates that you just kind of bash on there. Terrible when I think back, the way that roof was held up in our first house, and our loft here, huge bits of wood up there, nothing like the newer builds of today. So that was interesting. As I said, I've often wondered what's in there. In fact, I'm looking at it now from the inside because my high-tech studio is the upstairs front room, which is the bay window. So behind the radiator on the wall there is that huge gap, no insulation, and then the outside pebble dash bit. I might ask the chap, actually, how much he charges to do that. It's quite interesting. Oh, I must tell you this, it's quite funny. I was talking to one of the grandchildren the other day, and they said, why do people say that they hang up the phone? Which is a good question, actually, from a little one. Well, not so little these days. They're all growing up so fast. The reason people say they're going to hang up is because, do you remember well, you won't remember because you're too young, unlike me, the candlestick telephones. The receiver part that you put to your ear would hang on the hook. That's another thing in the Rolling Stones record. What's that record called? It's Off the Hook or something. It's Off the Hook. I won't sing. The hook is where you would hang the receiver part. So you did hang up the phone. So when you hang up on someone, anyway, you get the idea, don't you? I just thought that was interesting. Why do people say hang up when you don't hang the phone anywhere? We've got a genuine 1930s, I think it is, candlestick telephone that I restored. It's in the hallway under the grandmother clock. Looks rather nice, actually. And the wooden bell box on the wall. I like all the old-fashioned things. I was going to connect it to the landline system here, but in the end I didn't bother. There's no point, because I'm hoping to get rid of the landline altogether at some stage. But it does look rather nice in the hall. Back in the, was it late 70s, early 80s, we moved into a house. There was a trim phone. Do you remember the trim phone? Dreadful looking thing. Weird little handset that you pick up. The short coily lead. When you put the handset to your ear, it was too short. The phone would hang off the end of it. It was all too light and hopeless. I don't know who designs this rubbish. Someone must sit behind a desk thinking, I know, let's make a really useless looking telephone. When I went to California, that would be 1975, Los Angeles, stay with a relation, and their phone in the kitchen on the wall, the coily lead was miles long. I remember the chap answering the phone, and he walked to the other side of the kitchen with the handset to his ear, and there's this huge long coily lead. Of course, these days they're all mobile and no wires and stuff. But I thought, what a good idea, a huge long coily lead, so you could actually move away from the phone itself on the wall and get on with stuff. Quick change of subject again. Heard on the radio the other day, they were talking about a private detective. And it reminded me of a friend of mine back in the 1970s. He wanted to be a private detective. He saw himself as a bit of a sleuth. And he loved it. He loved the idea. He had a full-time job, but he loved the idea of following people, spying on people, making notes. And he said to me one day, we bumped into each other, and he said, I think my sister-in-law is having an affair. I'm going to look into it. And I said, I wouldn't do that if I were you. You know, keep out of it. It's family. Your wife's sister, keep out of it. No, he said, I saw her the other day. She went into a pub in town lunchtime. I said, she's probably going for lunch or something. I don't know. I would leave it alone if I were you. He wasn't going to leave it alone. He didn't say anything to his wife, but he started following her sister. He worked full time, of course, so he only had evenings, weekends, lunchtimes, the odd day off that he had. But he discovered that she was seeing someone else. He didn't know who it was. He'd seen the chap. He didn't recognise him at all, but she was definitely seeing this other chap. He was well into it. He had all his gear, binoculars and his camera and various other bits of equipment that he carried around in this briefcase. It's rather a long story, so briefly, he'd been checking up on her for about a month, following her when he could, keeping an eye on her. They were mainly meeting lunchtimes. Not at weekends, it was lunchtimes, and after work she would go to the pub and meet him there. She'd often walk to the pub with him. When they parted, they'd have a hug. No passionate kisses or anything like that, just a hug and a wave goodbye. And he eventually told his wife. She was horrified. Horrified, firstly, that her sister was having an affair, and secondly, that her husband had been sneaking around with his camera and his notebook and all this, following her sister. She knew he wanted to be a private detective, but she'd not expected him to start following her sister around. It all came to a head one evening when the four of them met. His sister-in-law and brother-in-law came round one evening, summer evening, having drinks in the garden, barbecue, and after a few beers he took his sister-in-law to one side and confronted her, showed her photographs of her with this other chap. She confessed. She said, I've been seeing him for years. She said eventually the plan was that they would run away together. She'd leave her husband, he'd leave his wife, and she was telling him all the sordid details of this illicit relationship, swearing him to secrecy. He didn't know what to do. Should he tell his wife? Should he tell his brother-in-law? Later that evening they'd all gone into the house from the garden as the sun was setting, and his sister-in-law, they're all sitting down, his sister-in-law stood up in front of the three of them, and she said, I have an announcement to make. I've been forced into this, but I've got to now be honest. And she looked at her husband and she said, sorry, I'm leaving you. I'm running off with this other chap. I've been seeing him for years. Now, the would-be private detective was horrified. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to say. He was horrified until they all burst out laughing. The man that she'd been seeing lunchtimes and once or twice after work was her boss. They sometimes went to the pub for lunch. Nothing wrong with that. Her husband, his brother-in-law, knew all about it. In fact, when he'd finished work, he'd often meet his wife and her boss and one or two other people from her company. He'd meet them in the pub for an after-work drink before going home to dinner. It was no secret. There was no affair at all. So the moral of the story is, I suppose, don't poke your nose into other people's business. Had she actually been having an affair, even with her boss, it could have all ended up rather messy. So there we are. Best not to have an affair in the first place, I think. That way you can't go wrong. There is a lot more to that story than what I've just told you. I could go on for ages about it, but I don't want to bore you with that. I'm now home alone. It's Saturday evening. I'm home alone. I've taken Tricia downtown and number one daughter. They're going to some outside music thing, which will be very loud, very hot, very horrible, and very awful. So I've dropped them off there and I'm here alone until they phone for a lift at about 11 o'clock later on this evening. So it's rather nice. I can just sit here quietly chatting away to you. Had an email this afternoon from Juniper. Is that Jennifer Juniper? Do you remember that record? Who sang that? Jennifer Juniper. Was it? I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, Juniper, who is a lady, well, a female at least. Oh, I'm sure you're a lady, Juniper. She says nothing to do with the way things were built then and they are built now. But she says it was lovely going back to the old days. You would wait for your TV programme to come on. Now, was it Dallas that I used to wait for? Dallas, I think it was 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. And you had to wait till the next Tuesday. You had to wait a week for the next Dallas episode to come along. And that's what Juniper is saying. Some things like Coronation Street, which I didn't watch, that was awful. They had 2 episodes a week, didn't they? But many other programmes, as she says, you just had to wait. You'd watch an episode, Dixon of Dock Green, for example, Z-Cars. And she's mentioned here Tomorrow's World. I remember that, Juniper, Tomorrow's World. That was nice. You'd watch the episode, half an hour or whatever. Then you've got to wait a week till the next one. Now, Trish and I have been watching, is it Manhunt with Martin Clunes? And it's about, 3-4 episodes or whatever. And one ends and Trish says, should we put the next one on? Oh, go on then. We watch that. Should we put the next one on? Okay, yeah, go on then. And we sort of have a whole evening of Manhunt, which I don't like that. I know that waiting for a week, as Juniper says, it's a long time. But there was something about it. There was something about waiting for the next episode. I remember people at work, even going back to school. I remember the kids saying, oh, it's Rawhide tonight. What was that, 8 o'clock on whatever evening? Rawhide's on tonight. Sunday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, Bonanza. Only every Sunday at 3 o'clock. Not every day or on demand like now. So yes, Juniper. Are you Jennifer Juniper or are you just a juniper berry? Is that what they make gin from? A friend of mine, years ago, he's passed away now, he had a couple of sloe berry bushes. Are they sloe berries that you put in gin? And he was always making sloe gin and things like that. I didn't like it. I don't like spirits, but it was amazing. Nothing to do with Jennifer Juniper. What it is juniper berries, isn't it? Yes, I did used to like waiting for programmes to come out. Now I think everything is too much. It's too much in your face, You can watch whatever you want, when you want. I want to watch Popeye now. I want to watch an old episode of Out of Town with Jack Hargreaves. I want to watch it now. And I do. I like that part of it. Jack Hargreaves, I used to wait a week for that. Whereas now, I must admit, I've been lying now, haven't I? I like waiting a week. I do watch one episode a day, or I have been for a while now. One episode of Out of Town each day I've been watching, which is quite good. And Dixon of Dock Green. But that's only because all the episodes are there and they're available. Juniper also mentioned in her email, and I agree once again, a lot of the programmes were calm back then. I know Dallas was exciting and Z-Cars, Dixon of Dock Green, But there were a lot of calm programmes, such as Out of Town, and the children's programmes were calm. Popeye was a cartoon, of course. Tom and Jerry, do you remember that back in the old days? Some people now are saying, oh, that's terrible. You know, you've got Tom bashing Jerry and bashing his head in and blowing each other up. It's awful. It's not good for children. But back then, the children knew that it was just a cartoon. They knew that you didn't go out doing that to other people. It was just a bit of fun. What was that rabbit? You know, the What's Up Doc rabbit. He was always being chased by this chap with a shotgun, wasn't he? This little man with a shotgun. And he was always blasting the rabbit and everything else in sight with the shotgun. Now, the kids, once again, knew that, you know, that's not the sort of thing you do in real life. Having said that, that does happen in real life, of course. But the children at the time, they enjoyed that sort of thing. It was just fun. It was innocent fun. They didn't then want to go and pick up a gun and go and blow someone's head off because they'd seen that in the cartoon. There used to be a lot of good children's programmes back then. Stingray, International Rescue, you know, Thunderbirds, all that stuff. Captain Scarlet, do you remember that? And the Mysterons. I mentioned that recently, didn't I? Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. That was good. They had guns and things, but it didn't incite violence. I don't know. Waffling on now, really talking rubbish, I suppose, as usual. What was exciting for me growing up as a teenager in the 60s, apart from the girls and the music, of course, there was the space programme, men landing on the moon, things like that. The development, colour TV came along, things were developing, being invented. I remember seeing my first colour television because I worked in the trade. We were one of the first companies to get colour TV in the town. And when the first colour telly arrived, we set it up in the workshop, turned it on. Oh, wow, look at that. Black and white film. No, but there were colour programmes. I remember the BBC sign would come up. It would say BBC with the world spinning. Then underneath, in colour. I was going to say as if it was something new. Well, of course, it was something new. BBC in colour. And in the Radio Times and the ITV Times, or whatever theirs was called, you'd have a programme and that would say in colour. They were exciting times, the 60s and 70s. Things were happening. Things were being developed. Technology was forging ahead. Didn't have computers like we have now, of course. That's all forging ahead, isn't it? I never thought the day would come when I could do a Spock on Starship Enterprise. Computer. Computer, tell me the weather forecast. And here it is. Well, we can ask her, Alexa, whisper that. Can't we? We can ask Alexa that. Flat screen tellies. I never thought there'd be a TV so slim you could hang it on the wall like a picture, like a painting, you know. It's amazing, isn't it? From those huge rabbit hutches we had, those big old black and white tellies, to a slim sort of screen you just hang on the wall. Still got all the wires to it, of course. Haven't got away from that yet. Then there was the Sony Walkman. Do you remember that? It would take cassettes, wouldn't it? Cassette tapes. Nowadays, where's my little outside recorder? Oh, it's over there. I can record hours of stuff on that. And there's no moving parts. No tape, no CD, no discs, no nothing. Just chips. Talking of chips, I have eaten actually. I could do with a bag of chips. We've got a fish and chip shop round the corner, but I mustn't go there. Sneak round there while Trish is out. And then sit here eating chips with too much salt and vinegar all over them, out of old newspaper. No, I mustn't do that like the good old days when I was a kid sitting on a wall somewhere eating chips out of newspaper. One thing I've done recently, we've got our hi-fi gear in the dining room. I've got a little SD card that fits in one of the units. It's amazing. I have filled it with hours and hours worth of music. I don't know what it holds. Probably the entire record collection of the whole world. But amazing on that little SD card. You know the type of thing I mean, don't you? Goes into a little slot. All that music on there. Whereas in the old days, you'd have a row of records, stacks of records, or rows and rows on shelves, 7-inch tapes for your tape recorder, all labelled up, all indexed properly. And now the whole lot is on one little SD card. Absolutely incredible. I suppose we've been talking recently, haven't we, about what's better today than it was back then. I suppose that sort of thing is better. Having said that, it was rather nice going out and buying a record, a vinyl record. Very often there was a poster inside you could stick on your bedroom wall. There was the album sleeve, the cover, with the artwork on or pictures of the group, the band. So it wasn't just the music, all that went with it, didn't it? Whereas everything on an SD card, well, there's no album cover to look at, no poster, it's just nothing. I shall go and check Gary the tortoise in a moment, his sunbathing in the back garden, which he's been doing all day. Rather nice sort of job if you can get it, isn't it? I'm going to say goodbye to you in a minute and carry on working on my 1940s military communications receiver, American one. Wow, you're saying that's exciting. My brother-in-law popped round the other day and we were talking about this and that. He said radio hams, radio amateurs, they're nerds. And I said, well, military vehicle people like you that collect old Jeeps and stuff, they're weirdos. So we agreed on that. He's a weirdo and I'm a nerd. It's a good job that people do collect things like his Jeep and his 1940s Vauxhall staff car from the war years and the sort of club or group that he's in. They've got tanks, huge tanks and things like that, armoured vehicles, all sorts of stuff. And it is good that, okay, they're weird and I'm a nerd, but it is good that people collect this stuff. Like the radio I'm working on at the moment, I believe it's 1946, and it's been got at by someone, people that don't know what they're doing. They get in there with a screwdriver and wreck stuff. But I'm slowly getting it back to how it should be. And at some stage, it'll work. That'll be exciting. Exciting for me, anyway. It's the same with the old railways, like the Bluebell Railway that we go to. Haven Street on the Isle of Wight. They've got the steam engines running, all the old rolling stock, and it's just brilliant. Original signal boxes, all the brass work polished up, everything looked after. And of course the youngsters, not like me, I remember all that from my day. I remember the steam engines going past every day, so it's nothing new to me. But youngsters now, like our little grandson, who's, he's 9 now, he's never seen this stuff. He doesn't know what a signal box is. He doesn't know what a steam engine is. Well, he does, because we've taken him to the Bluebell and shown him. But if there weren't things like that around that people were restoring, all we'd have is photographs. That would be it, photographs and films. As it's a lovely evening, I've decided to go along to Swanbourne Lake in Arundel, and I'm just walking through the water, having a nice paddle. Some ducks over there. I must stop doing this. It's going to annoy everyone. Who was it? Was it Colin or Derek got me onto this? I don't know. Anyway, enough of that. I shall leave you in peace. Thanks for listening as always. It's been lovely chatting to you. Don't forget to email me, raiserants@protonmail.com, if you've anything to say, any complaints about the water or other daft sound effects that I've been mixing in. Have a look at the website, raiserants.info. I shall see you all on Wednesday, of course. It's going to be a nice day tomorrow, Sunday, down here on the south coast at least. I don't know what's happening up north. But I shall see you on Wednesday. Be good, here we go. If you're bad, don't get caught. Enjoy yourself, stay healthy, and above all, keep smiling. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye for now.